my restlessness and asked what was wrong, but I couldn't tell her the truth. One night, I decided I won't go back to that forest. I told myself, God has already saved me once. He'll save me again. So I ignored Ton's calls. I stopped answering his messages. I just wanted to live normally. But peace refused to stay with me. Each night, something strange happened, glasses breaking by themselves, shadows walking behind me, my name echoing through the house. One midnight, I woke up sweating. My room was filled with smoke, though there was no fire. I heard someone crying, a voice that sounded like mine. I rushed to the mirror and saw me, standing inside it, crying and bleeding from the eyes. I screamed and fell backward. My mother ran in, shouting my name. But when she looked at the mirror, nothing was there. She prayed for me that night, tears running down her face. I could feel her fear, and I hated myself for it. The next morning, I went to church. I knelt before the pastor and told him everything. He looked at me quietly and said, "Charles, not every blessing comes from God. But mercy is greater than darkness." He prayed for me and gave me a small bottle of anointing oil. For the first time in years, I felt a bit of peace. But deep inside, I knew the battle wasn't over. I could still feel something watching me, following me, like a shadow that never rests. Days later, I heard shocking news: Ton had disappeared. His car was found abandoned near the third mainland bridge, doors open, engine still running. But he was gone. No one knew what happened. That night, I dreamed of him. He was standing in a dark place, surrounded by smoke. He stretched out his hand and said, "Charles, they are coming for you next." I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. Fear pushed me to do what I had avoided for years, go back to Ijibu Ode. I wanted answers. I drove alone through the night, the same dark road I had taken years ago. But this time, the forest felt different, heavier, darker, angrier. When I reached the shrine, I froze. The hut was half burnt, the ground covered in ashes. The air smelled of decay. I called out, "Baba Ijibu," but there was no answer, only the sound of wind and rustling leaves. As I looked around, I saw something shiny under a fallen tree. It was Baba's staff, broken in half. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me, deep and cold, "You should not have come back." I turned quickly, but no one was there. Then I saw shadows forming into shapes, human but not human. They circled me, whispering words I didn't understand. My knees grew weak. I dropped to the ground and shouted, "Please. I don't want this life anymore." The sky thundered. A bright flash of light struck the tree beside me. The shadow screamed and vanished into the ground. I fell face down, shaking. When I looked up, everything was quiet again. I didn't know if I was alive or dreaming. In that moment, I cried like a child. I begged God to forgive me, to free me from whatever I had done. I made a promise: if I live to see tomorrow, I will use my story to warn others. I didn't know it then, but that night marked the beginning of my redemption. When I woke up the next morning in the forest, the air felt clean for the first time in years. The weight on my chest was gone. The sky was brighter, and the birds were singing again. I looked around and realized I was still alive. My car was parked at the roadside, covered in dust. I walked to it slowly, my legs shaking. I didn't know how I got out of the forest. All I knew was that something, or someone, had saved me. When I got back to Lagos, my mother ran to me, crying. "Charles, where have you been?" she shouted. I hugged her tightly, unable to speak. For the first time in years, I felt truly home. That night, I told her everything, from Ton to Baba Ijibu to the forest. She wept and said, "My son, God never left you. He just waited for you to come back." Her words touched my heart. I promised myself to never walk that dark road again. I decided to start fresh. I sold some of my cars, gave out money to people who needed it, and began attending church regularly. I didn't care about being rich anymore, I just wanted peace. Some people said I was foolish for giving things away. But I told them, peace is better than gold. Deep down, I knew that true wealth wasn't in money, it was in sleeping at night without fear. One morning, I received a letter without a name. The handwriting was shaky, and it simply said, "If you want to understand what really happened to Ton, come to the old market square at midnight." My heart skipped. I didn't know if it was a trap or a cry for help. But curiosity wouldn't let me rest. I decided to go, not out of fear, but to finally face my past. The market was empty when I arrived. Only the moonlight touched the old wooden stalls. I stood quietly, waiting. Then, from the shadows, a woman appeared. She wore a long wrapper and had beads around her neck. "You are Charles," she said calmly. "I know your story." I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "I am Baba Ajibu's daughter." My heart froze. She told me that her father had broken sacred rules by helping too many people for money. He lost his gift, she said. The spirits punished him. She also said Ton had tried to renew his power without guidance, and that was why he vanished. She looked at me with pity. "You survived because you asked for mercy," she said softly. "That is something few men do before it's too late." Tears filled my eyes. I finally understood, it was grace, not luck, that kept me alive. Before she left, she handed me a small wooden carving. "Keep this," she said. "It's not for power, but for protection. Use it to remind yourself of where you came from." Then she disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone in the cold night. I stood there for a long time, holding the carving tight. For the first time, I didn't feel scared of the night. I felt free. I went home and started sharing my story with young people. I told them about temptation, greed, and the price of shortcuts. Many listened in tears. I warned them, there's no fast way to peace. True success takes time. Soon, my story began to spread. People invited me to speak in schools and churches. I didn't see it as fame, I saw it as redemption. My pain had found purpose. One night, I dreamed of Ton. He was smiling, dressed in white, standing in a bright field. "Charles," he said, "thank you." I asked, "For what?" He smiled wider and said, "For telling the truth." When I woke up, I felt light, like a heavy door had finally opened. I prayed for his soul that morning, and for everyone who had lost their way chasing wealth. Today, I live a simple life. I have enough to eat, a small home, and a peaceful heart. I help others rise honestly, and I never forget where I came from. Whenever I see the carving from Baba's daughter, I smile. It reminds me that light can grow from the darkest places. I tell everyone I meet, if you ever feel tempted by the wrong path, remember my story, and choose peace instead. Weeks passed, and the invitations kept coming. Churches, schools, and youth groups wanted me to share my story. The first time I stood before a crowd, my hands shook. But when I spoke, the silence in the hall told me my words had found a home in their hearts. I didn't speak like a preacher. I spoke like a man who had fallen and gotten up again. When I said, "Money without peace is prison," people nodded, some even cried. That night, I realized my pain had become my ministry. One afternoon, a young journalist named Edora came to my house. She said she'd heard about my story and wanted to make a documentary. She was confident, kind, and had long braided hair that shimmered under the sun. At first, I didn't want to talk to the media. But she said, "Charles, your story can save lives." Something in her voice made me believe her. I agreed, not knowing that this project would change everything once again. Edora and her team followed me everywhere, to my speaking events, to the village, even to the spot where I had once slept under the bridge. As the camera rolled, I felt my past replaying before my eyes. When we visited my mother, she told them, "I almost lost my son to the world, but God brought him back." Her voice cracked, and everyone went silent. Even the cameraman wiped his eyes. As part of the documentary, we visited the same market in Lagos where I had once served my uncle. Many traders recognized me. "Oh, Charles, is this really you?" they said. I smiled and shook their hands. Standing in front of that old shop, I remember the pain, the betrayal, the hunger, and the courage that kept me alive. I whispered quietly, "Thank you, God, for not leaving me there." While cleaning my old house one evening, I found a small box my mother had kept. Inside were old letters from my uncle. One of them shocked me. It said, "I regret what happened to Charles. My wife has confessed everything. I hope someday he forgives me." My hands shook as I read it. All those years of pain, and I never knew he was sorry. I felt tears roll down my face. I decided right then, forgiveness would be my final victory. The next day, I traveled to my uncle's village. He was older now, weak, and sitting quietly under a tree. When he saw me, his eyes filled with fear. "Charles," he whispered. I knelt before him and said, "Uncle, I forgive you." He started crying, covering his face. "I wronged you, my son," he said. I held his hand and replied, "Let's end the pain today." That moment, both our hearts found peace. The next morning, I rushed to Ton's house. I told him everything, the sounds, the whispers, the mirror. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he sighed and said, "Charles, it's time. Baba warned you, didn't he? You must renew the bond before the new moon." I swallowed hard. "What if I don't?" I asked. Ton's eyes darkened. "You don't want to find out," he said. "The spirits that blessed you can also collect what's theirs." His words cut deep into my heart. For days, I couldn't sleep. My mother noticed my restlessness and asked what was wrong, but I couldn't tell her the truth. One night, I decided, I won't go back to that forest. I told myself, God has already saved me once. He'll save me again. So I ignored Ton's calls. I stopped answering his messages. I just wanted to live normally. But peace refused to stay with me. Each night, something strange happened, glasses breaking by themselves, shadows walking behind me, my name echoing through the house. One midnight, I woke up sweating. My room was filled with smoke, though there was no fire. I heard someone crying, a voice that sounded like mine. I rushed to the mirror and saw me, standing inside it, crying and bleeding from the eyes. I screamed and fell backward. My mother ran in, shouting my name. But when she looked at the mirror, nothing was there. She prayed for me that night, tears running down her face. I could feel